Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Naruto was son of the Greek gods and harem with all? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Austin Jack Zero for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. Let's start this video. It was a happy day for the village of Konoha, as today was the day of the defeat of the Kyuubi by the Yondaime Hokage. People were celebrating in the thousands. The streets were clogged by those partaking in the festivities, and by the merchants selling plush toys of the Yondaime and Gamabunta. Thousands of people from other lands came here on this day to partake in the festivities, and to watch the reenactment of the Kyuubi's defeat, which ended in the burning of a giant fox on the outskirts of the village. It was also a certain young man's birthday. The man in question was currently bounding across the rooftops of the village at an alarming rate, trying to escape the mob that was no doubt still following him. "Come back here, demon!" shouted a random jonin from the crowd that was chasing him. It was also a common occurrence on this particular day to see a young man being chased by a mob of civilians and low-rank ninja. This particular year, though, a lot more Anbu and jonin went to the bar and got drunk than usual. Thus, when the young man passed the jonin lounge, most of those who were drunk joined the mob that was chasing the young man. "Haha!" shouted a particularly short jonin. "We've got you now!" Unfortunately for the young man, the jonin in question was right. The young man had accidentally run himself into a dead end. He then turned around to look at his tormentors. The young man in question had golden blonde hair, bright blue cerulean eyes, and 3 black whisker marks adorning his cheeks. He was wearing orange pants, and an orange jacket with a high white cotton collar. His new leaf headband adorned his forehead, though it was slightly grimy. In fact, his hair was messy, and his clothes were covered in grime from running for so long. This young man was known as the prankster king of Konoha by his few friends, but to so many others he was known simply by Demon, or Demon Brat. This was because he was the Jinchuriki of the demon known as Kyuubi, the same one that had attacked the village 13 years ago today. This young man's name was Naruto Uzumaki, and to him his birthday only meant one thing. Hell. Quick! Catch it before it can escape! Someone in the back of the crowd yelled. As soon as the words came out of their mouth, Naruto found himself tied up by ninja wire, pinned together by Saban firmly planted in his hands and feet. Despite knowing it was pointless, Naruto tried to plead with them. "Please," he said in a shaky and pained voice, "what did I do to you? What did you do to us?" Someone in the crowd yelled, "What did you do to us? You killed our families and friends, that's what you did. It's only fair that we get payback." A chorus of yes rang out within the mob. After that the mob surged forward, ignoring the boy's cries, and proceeded to beat the boy into unconsciousness. After everyone had had their turn, the boy was battered, bruised, and burned, but alive. Of course someone just had to point this out. "Hey everyone, the demon is still alive!" "Must be his demon nature," someone said. People were contemplating the various ways to kill the young man until someone spoke up. "Hey, why don't we stuff him in the fox? When it goes up in flames, he'll definitely be dead." "Yeah. Let's do it." And so someone picked up the near-dead boy and took him to the giant floor, and placed him next to one of the pillars that was lined with explosive tags, but would also be hit by the flames that would be simulated by fire-release tags near the mouth of the fox. And so Naruto slept for the next 5 hours, unaware of his doom. Konoha outskirts, 9 p.m. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sanime Hokage, was enjoying the Kyuubi festival with his family. He was worried about his surrogate grandson, Naruto. Usually, he would have been called to the hospital or his office at least once for an issue regarding the blonde. He still hadn't. He resolved to check on the blonde after the burning of the fox. He wasn't going to miss it, as it was his grandson's favorite event of the year. This year was supposed to have clear weather and beautiful, starlit skies. Instead, though, it looked like the sky itself was boiling. In fact, it looked like nature was turning against itself. Even so, the burning of the fox would go on as scheduled, seeing as how it was such a big event. Kakashi was wearing a cloak that was a clone of the Yondaime's, standing on top of a scale model of Gamabunta. He hated having to do this, but unfortunately for him he'd lost the Jonin poker tournament last week. So here he was. He didn't really mind doing it, but it took forever for him to get the golden wig out of his gravity-defying hair. Oh well, he thought, at least I'll have a good excuse for my genin team tomorrow. Looking toward the crowd behind him, he got the signal to go ahead. He made the hand sign for the fire release tags to go off. As usual, this caused the fox's mouth to spout fire. All he needed to do was put on a show for the next 7 minutes, then he would jump on top of the fox and activate the explosive seals, jump off, and he was done. So for the next 7 minutes, he displayed his jutsu and power and speed, assaulting the fox with all of it, much to the attending nobles and the crowd's delight. Getting the signal to finish up, he jumped on top of the fox's head and made the sign for the explosive seals to go off. In the split second he was on the fox's head though, he could have sworn he heard someone screaming. He just shrugged it off thinking it was someone in the crowd. As soon as he got to the ground, the fox blew up with a great roar. The fireworks in the heart of the fox went off, resulting in many oohs and ahs from the crowd, as well as some cheering. Despite this, Kakashi could still hear someone screaming. Where the hell is that coming from? Kakashi wondered aloud. It sounds like it's coming from the fire shit. Kakashi prepared a Suiton jutsu to put out the flames, but before he could activate it, a great flash of lightning struck the remains of the fox. The screaming didn't stop, but it moved to the top of the Gamabunta replica. From what Kakashi could see, there were now 3 figures standing in a circle on the top of its head. Still concerned about the screaming, Kakashi made his way back up to the top of the frog. The screaming by this point had reached the audience, and everyone but the self-proclaimed demon haters had stopped cheering. The Hokage then took control of the situation. Everyone stay calm, he said. Me and Asuma and Kurenai will go investigate. The rest of you stay put. And then the trio bounded toward the source of the screaming. What they saw when they arrived shocked them. Naruto was severely burned and bleeding. What could be seen of him was contorted in ways that shouldn't be possible, showing that most of his bones were broken. 3 men were standing around Naruto, looking down at him with what looked like tears in their eyes. This caused the Hokage and his escort as well as the newly arrived Kakashi to get into battle-ready stances. Who are you and what have you done to Naruto? The Hokage shouted. The one in the middle shuffled and responded with a whisper, you promised. The Hokage looked startled. What? I don't remember promising you anything. Who are you? The one in the middle looked up. He had sky-blue eyes and golden blonde hair that had bangs that framed his face. All 4 of them immediately looked shocked. Minato, Kakashi whispered. Minato continued, you promised me that he would be a hero, that he would be cared for. I used my own son to seal the Kyuubi, and this is how he is treated? These people should burn in Tartarus. I completely agree, brother, the one on the left said. I will see to it personally. I will not see my grandson punished like this when he did nothing wrong, nor will I. My great-grandson deserves something much better than this. The one on the right said. Minato, the Hokage pleaded, don't do anything brash. Hiruzen, the only reason this village is still standing is because you, Kakashi, Jiraiya, and a few others that me and my son trust are still here. So you won't destroy the village? No, but I will inform them of what they have done to their precious hero's son. I will also take my son back to our realm, ancient rules be damned. The ones on the left and right nodded, showing their agreement. Hiruzen sighed and said, fine. It probably is for the best. But can we at least see him from time to time? Minato smiled slightly and said maybe, but it's completely up to him. I won't force anything more on him. I have done enough to accidentally ruin his life. Hiruzen and Kakashi smiled, and then Kakashi asked, so how are you going to tell Konoha? Minato just stepped forward and pointed his index finger toward his throat and said with a voice like thunder, people of Konoha. Today you have made a grave mistake. You have killed a young man who was the Yandame's son. His name was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the 3rd Jinchuriki host to the Kyuubi. Wallow in misery as you realize that you have just killed your hero's son in your ignorance. The lightning clashed as if to prove his point, and removed his finger and laid his hand back into his pocket. Immediately after this, a small blue portal appeared behind the men. The one on the right stepped in, followed by the one on the left, and disappeared. Minato picked up his son bridal style and walked toward it himself before he turned back toward the small group and said with a small smile, till next time. Then he stepped into the portal himself and closed it with a clap of thunder, leaving 4 happy ninjas and a mourning populace of Konoha in his wake. Naruto awoke to the sound of what sounded like a bird outside his window. He looked around, noticing his unfamiliar surroundings. He was laying on a king-sized bed with orange sheets. In front of him, he saw a black dresser cabinet with 6 shelves. Rushing outside the door, he saw a clear glass table with a gray cloth bench. Looking to his left, he saw a black leather couch with a glass coffee table sitting in front of a large plasma TV. The TV rested on a black cabinet that had a matching copy on the wall closest to the dining room. The bathroom was in a small room in the middle of the dining room. The kitchen was small but sported a fridge, an oven, a sink, and a table that had a computer on it. While Naruto was getting reacquainted with his new apartment, he completely missed the note on the dining room table. Rocketing past the table, he finally noticed it when it flew into his face. What's this? he asked to no one in particular. He opened it and began reading. Dear Naruto, first of all I would like you to know that I am your father, Minato Namikaze, or at least that's what I was called back in that world. I and your grandfathers transported you here after what happened at the festival. This is your home. You have family here. Your mother was Kushina Uzumaki. She was one of the few people that had the gall to stand up to a god. That was why I loved her. I'm sorry I couldn't be there for you as you were growing up. Hell, I'm sorry I can't be there now, but our family has rules that I need to follow regarding our children. Just know that I love you, and that we will meet someday. Till then, practice your jutsu, but not in public. This world doesn't know of chakra. Your shadow clones can help you train, they give you their memories when they dispel. In the scroll next to this note, you will find hundreds of jutsu that our family has acquired and some of my personal jutsu, as well as some of this world's money, enough to get you by for the next year. Get stronger and make friends. With love, Minato Namikaze. P.S. Read up on Greek mythology, it'll help someday. I guarantee it. Naruto looked up from the note with teary eyes. Sure enough, there was a scroll with a sealing mark on it. Biting his thumb so that a little blood came out, he swiped it across the seal, and sure enough, out popped scrolls labeled Taijutsu, Ninjutsu, Genjutsu, Kenjutsu, and Fuinjutsu. With a cracking voice Naruto chalked out, "Thanks Dad. I'll make you and my grandfathers proud." Then, hopping toward the window he looked out upon buildings as tall as Gamabunta. Somewhat shocked, he opened the window nonetheless and shouted, "Look out world! Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze is here!" Believe it! It had taken Naruto about 2 weeks for him to get used to the new world. After accidentally waving to a guy hailing a cab, giving a waitress a $100 tip for a $7 sandwich, and punching Mickey Mouse in the face thinking he was a monster, the average New York lifestyle began to become an everyday occurrence to the blonde. At the end of the second week, he received another letter from his father telling him that he was enrolled in a school called Yancy Academy which was starting in 2 weeks. Luckily enough for Naruto, he had been transported to this world just before fall vacation, so he had time to get adjusted and practice a bit before dealing with school. Since then, Naruto had read several math and economics books, courtesy of shadow clones, trying to get an idea of the value of money in this world. After he finished the third book, he realized that his father had left him $20,000. Almost overjoyed by this fact, he had gone out the same day and bought new clothes, some art for his apartment, and a few training implements from a store in Midtown including a cheap katana. All this was used for was training though, so Naruto didn't mind. He'd also familiarized himself with where he was living. He lived in a part of New York called the West Village, village referring to Greenwich Village, which was one of the oldest parts of New York. Evidently it was a really bad place to live until a few years ago, when it had started being renovated into a more proper shopping district. Some people even called it the New Soho, which was big considering that Soho was where everyone went for everything stylish. After figuring out how to use the subway system, Naruto had spent his remaining time focusing on Fuinjutsu. He realized that the academy he was going to was a boarding school, and he really didn't want to come back home to a dusty apartment. Originally his intention was to find a self-cleaning seal, but Naruto soon found himself to be immersed in seals. He was great at it, although Naruto chalked it up to being the son of 2 of the most famous sealers that Konoha had ever known, and so it got down to 2 days before the start of the academy. Naruto had basically taken in everything he could from his family's scroll on Fuinjutsu. What would have taken years for anyone else to do had taken Naruto 2 weeks. This was of course due to his affinity to the art, as well as his ability to create hundreds of shadow clones. Right now, the blonde was tinkering for his father's Hiraishin seal. If I take this and move it there, no, that makes it into an exploding seal. But if I move this here, ha, I got it, he yelled, and attempted to stand, but in his excitement he forgot that he was sitting at the table, and when he attempted to stand he banged his knees against the metal part of it. After this, as reflex, he bent down to try and prevent himself from experiencing the pain that was sure to come, but instead he hit his head on the table. The end result was the young man falling to the floor in self-inflicted pain. To any passerby, they would have found the blonde sprawled on the floor to be rather humorous. While this was happening, Naruto heard someone knocking at his door. This was unusual for a New Yorker, as most apartments you have to be let in or buzzed in. For Naruto, however, this had become a common occurrence. This was because whenever someone knocked, it was usually something from Naruto's father or grandfathers. His grandfather sent letters last week, telling him that they were sorry for abandoning him and were looking forward to meeting him one day. They also sent along sets of kunai and shuriken that they said were especially made for him, and that they contained chakra metal. While Naruto still hadn't even begun learning his jutsu or elements, he was looking forward to doing it so he could use their gifts to their fullest when he was able. Getting up from his unplanned make-out session with the floor, Naruto slowly hobbled to the door, fully expecting no one to be there. In fact, he was so confident in this belief that he didn't even bother to look through the porthole, and that little glass thing on an apartment door that you can see people through. So he was thoroughly surprised that when he opened the door, a man was standing there looking at him. The man had a slim, runner's figure, which was shown off by the U.S. Postal Service uniform he was wearing. He had blue eyes, though not as blue as Naruto's, hidden under matted salt and pepper hair. In his left hand he held a pen and pad, and underneath his right arm there was a small box. "Delivery to one Naruto Uzumaki?" the man asked, and at the same time told. "That's me," said Naruto. "All right then, kid, just sign here, and the package is yours," he said, handing Naruto the pen and pad. The pen looked really interesting. It looked like it was being intertwined by snakes. While he was signing, Naruto thought he felt one of the snakes move, but shrugged it off as being excited from finally completing his father's seal. After Naruto finished signing, the man took the pad and the pen and handed the box to Naruto. "There you go, kiddo. Have a good one." "You too," Naruto replied. After the man left, Naruto closed the door to his apartment, and looked excitedly at the box. He had a feeling that it was from his father, so he was naturally excited. Getting out the scissors he kept in the kitchen, Naruto made quick work of the box. Inside it was a golden cap pen with a note beside it. The note read, "Dear Naruto, good work on figuring out the Hiraishin. And in record time. It took me 3 years to figure that out, but you managed to get it in 2 weeks. If only I had thought of shadow clones anyways. As a reward for completing it, I'm giving you this pen. Yes, it probably seems lame, but it has about 20 seals on it. There are 2 things you need to know about it. The first is that it will always return to your pocket if you lose it. It has a seal similar to the summoning seal on it, so that as soon as you touched it, it became coded to your DNA. The second thing you need to know is to never take the cap off the pen unless you are in imminent danger. Seeing that you were a shinobi back in Konoha, I think that you will know when that is. Be well, my son. Minato Namikaze." Naruto at that moment was experiencing 3 different emotions: confusion about why the gift was a pen, surprise that his father had predicted exactly when he would finish, and curiosity about what seals were on the pen. Regardless, he didn't want to betray his father's trust, so he decided that he wasn't going to uncap the pen to examine it. He even went so far as to put it in his left-hand pocket so he wouldn't grab it by mistake when he was in school. The next 2 days flew by quickly. The morning of his departure, Naruto made a self-cleaning seal for the entire apartment. After that he grabbed his ninjutsu scroll and several of his new kunai and shuriken, and sealed them into a storage seal that he'd written on the back of his hand. After all this was done, he packed enough clothes for 2 weeks and got himself dressed. His attire had changed quite a bit since he got to this world. Gone was the Kill Me orange jumpsuit, replaced by a rather stylish Naruto. He was wearing blue jeans, a button-down pinstripe t-shirt over simple black t-shirt, orange sneakers, and to top it off a loosely woven straw fedora with a pinstripe orange band that wrapped around it that was resting on his spiky hair. After placing a Hiraishin seal on his couch, Naruto left for school. It took him about 20 minutes to get to the bus station from where his apartment was by taxi. After paying the driver and stepping out, he walked over to the ticket booth, asked the man behind the counter which bus was going to Yancy, and what time the next bus was, and paid for his ticket. He had to wait for about another hour before the bus to Buffalo was boarding. He would get off at the 3rd stop to get to Yancy. By the time Naruto got through the line, there weren't many seats left. The closest one was next to a boy about a year younger than him. He had short, black hair, green eyes, and looked like he spent a lot of time near the ocean. Naruto wasn't sure how he could tell that, but the kid had the kind of tan that you get by spending a lot of time near the beach or by the pool. "Is this seat taken?" Naruto asked. "No," the boy replied. Naruto stowed the backpack he brought with him in a small hanging compartment above the seat, and then sat next to the boy. "So where are you heading?" Naruto asked. The boy turned toward him and replied, "I'm getting off at the 3rd stop, heading to a place called Yancy Academy. I go to school there." Naruto got a foxy grin as he replied, "Really? That's where I'm heading too. My name is Naruto Uzumaki," he said, sticking his right hand forward to shake. The boy's eaves got wide before he smiled and took the blonde's hand and shook it, saying, "My name is Percy. Percy Jackson." Naruto smiled and replied, "Nice to meet you. By the way, do you know if the academy sells ramen?" It had been 7 months since Naruto had started attending Yancy. He was in classes with his own age group at first, but the teachers had quickly discovered two things. The first was that the kid was a genius at basically everything, but that he also had ADHD and dyslexia. Because of this they put him in 8th grade math, science, and English, but put him in 6th grade history, saying that the teacher would help him deal with any problems he had. The teachers also had trouble figuring out where to put him, but that was quickly amended when they discovered he was friends with Percy, so they put him in Percy's room, which was shared by Grover Underwood. The guy was a cripple from the waist down, and used his crutches to get around, but on enchilada day he was always first in line. The three had quickly become inseparable. Also, since Naruto had arrived at the academy, he had mastered 2 of his 5 elemental affinities. It turned out that he had a strong affinity to wind and a second to earth, but also slight affinities to lightning, water and fire, though the fire was unique because it was black flames that were ridiculously hot. So far he'd mastered wind and earth, and was working on lightning. He'd also mastered all of the wind jutsu that his family had, as well as mastered the Rasengan, and added the wind element to it. In order to do this though, Naruto had to put himself through grueling chakra training, but it had paid off. Naruto now had the most precise chakra control possible. Lastly, Naruto had made contact with the Kyuubi. In fact, the fox was rather pleasant once you got to know it. But that didn't stop Naruto from being scared shitless the first time they met. Flashback. Naruto was just getting back to his room after a long day of training. Percy and Grover had learned long ago that his disappearances didn't last long, and that when he came back he was dead tired. So when he got in he just looked at them and waved before plopping down on his bed for a needed nap. The last thing Naruto was expecting was to wake up in a sewer. As he stood, he noticed the pipe running along the walls and the floor being covered in water, as well as the multiple entrances and pathways both in front of him and behind him. He also noticed that when he stood, he wasn't wet in the slightest. Before he could begin pondering about how that was possible, out of the corner of his eye he saw a small red figure dart into one of the hallways adjoining the room he was currently in. For a few seconds Naruto doubted what he saw, and wasn't planning to follow it, but decided to, after thinking that if it were an animal it might know a way out. So he followed the blur, which kept well ahead of him so that Naruto couldn't see it, to a large open room. There was nothing in the room except large bars held together by a paper that had the kanji for seal written on it. "Come closer, Kit," said an ominous voice on the other side of the bars. Naruto, against his better judgment, did just that. "Perfect," the voice said just before a giant black claw came halfway out of the cage, stopping right in front of Naruto. Naruto flinched and brought his hands up to protect himself, all the while knowing what was about to happen, but nothing did. Lowering his arms from his face, he saw a giant fox rolling around in its cage laughing. Oh, that was funny. I still got it," the fox said, losing its demonic tone. "And if only you could see your face right now, ha ha ha." The fox started to laugh again, and by this point Naruto was getting seriously pissed. He thought he was about to die. What did it expect? Finally getting tired of the fox laughing, Naruto said, "Hey, you big-ass fox, where are we?" The fox finally calmed down, and got out between giggles. "We're in your mindscape, Kit. So why does it look like a sewer?" "Well, Kit, this is probably resentment over your old life. That's been fading slowly though. Water used to be up to your knees, by the way," the fox said with obvious pain and sorrow in its face. "I'm sorry about how you were treated in your early life and about killing your mom, though that entire fiasco wasn't my fault. Some asshole Uchiha put me under a genjutsu that made me go berserk. And I was sealed in your mother last, so if you want to know anything about her, just ask." "Thanks," Naruto replied, "and I forgive you." This shocked the fox to the core. It really hadn't expected to be forgiven so quickly, much less by the boy who had suffered for its mistakes. So the fox did the only thing it could do. It retreated into its cage and began to cry. "Hey, are you okay?" Naruto asked as he rushed forward. How can you forgive me so easily after all that I've done to you?" The fox got up between sobs. Oddly enough, Naruto still couldn't find it after it disappeared. "I mean, how do you lose sight of a thing in a cage that's the size of a mountain?" So he just replied into the darkness of the cage he was now in. "I can, because it wasn't you who did those things. It was the man who controlled you. I should know better than anyone about being judged for something that's not my fault. So of course I forgive you." As soon as he finished saying this, the crying resumed, but quickly got louder to the point where it sounded like it was right next to him before he was talked to the ground by a bright red blur. Opening his eyes after a few seconds, he saw something he could only describe as beautiful. In his arms was a bright red-haired woman with naturally red eyes and a very cute nose. The hair reached down her back to her thighs. Naruto guessed that standing, she was about 5 feet 5 inches. She was wearing a fine orange kimono that showed off her C-cup breasts. Behind her, 9 tails were folded between her legs in an act of obvious submission. For the next 5 minutes, Naruto held and comforted her, listening to her whisperings of "I'm sorry" and "thank you" into his chest. Finally standing up, they both looked at each other before Naruto blushed at her figure. "Thank you, Naruto. If there is anything I can do for you, please tell me," she said with sorrow obvious in her eyes. Naruto pondered it for a bit before saying, "You can do 2 things for me." At this point she was worried about what he was going to say because he took so long. "The first thing you can do is tell me your name," Naruto said with a smile. Kyubi was embarrassed. After everything that she had just done, she hadn't even bothered to tell him her name. Blushing she said, "Well, I'm known by most as the Kyubi no Kitsune, but my brothers and sisters call me Kara." "Well then, Kara, the second thing you can do for me is work with me and become my friend, okay?" Just then Kara burst out in sobs again, which lasted for the better part of half an hour before she calmed down. For the next hour after this they talked about Kara's life and the Sage of 6 Paths before Kara said, "Well, it was nice talking with you, Kit. I'm looking forward to seeing you again." Naruto blushed at that before he felt himself being tugged into consciousness. "Thanks, Kara-chan. I'll be back to visit again soon." As he was disappearing he saw her blush and say, "Kara-chan, I like the sound of that," before he woke up in his bed to the bright morning sun. And flashback. Since then he'd visited her every day when he went to sleep, sometimes practicing jutsu and sword katas with her. After all, it is hard to find a being with more experience than a several thousand-year-old fox queen. Now it was early May, and almost time for the end of the school year. He was in the bus on the way to the History Museum with Grover and Percy as well as his favorite teacher, Mr. Brunner, along with a sadist math teacher named Mrs. Dodds and Nancy Bobofit who was the class bully. Well, as bully-like as you can get with a bunch of troubled kids. Anyway, right now Naruto was busy looking out at the city. Even after living here for so long, he still wasn't used to buildings being the size of Kara. He was interrupted by a piece of peanut butter hitting the back of his head. "Nancy, what are you doing?" he asked in a slightly evil tone. Nothing," she replied nervously. It was commonly known that anyone who crossed the blonde would be horribly pranked. Even the teachers weren't safe. One time, a few kids tried to prank the blonde and his roommates, only for it to horribly backfire to the point where their room was permanently painted puke green. The teachers never knew who did it, but since then no one had dared to cross the blonde or his friends. Most people called him the prank ninja after that. Of course not in public, but it was the blonde's unofficial title. "That's what I thought," Naruto said as he turned back to the window. "Hey, you see anything out of the ordinary?" Percy asked jokingly. "Nah, I'm just not used to this yet, the city and all. Yeah, it's a little overwhelming, isn't it? For me, defiantly, it's a little different than the country town I grew up in." Just then, another piece of peanut butter sailed forward, and was about to hit Grover, but Naruto noticed this and intercepted it with a pencil. "Ms. Bobofit, what did I just say?" "I'm sorry," she said, paling slightly. Everyone, even the teachers, started laughing before everyone settled down, and Naruto went back to staring out the window. "Thanks, Naruto," Grover said. "Don't mention it, G-man." "Seriously though, thanks," Percy said. "I was about to lose it." "It's fine. I don't want you getting in any more trouble anyway." "Yeah, don't forget you're on probation, dude." I know. I'm trying not to get expelled." "My mom would be pissed. I bet, though it's hard to imagine your mom angry. She just doesn't seem like the type," Naruto said. He'd met Percy's mom during winter break when Percy invited Naruto over for Christmas dinner. He'd also met Gabe, Percy's stepfather. The man was addicted to poker and dip, and smelled like a horrible combination between urine and onions. Why Mrs. J put up with him Naruto would never know. "Trust me, dude, she's really scary when she wants to be." And with that, the trio just talked the rest of the trip away about how Naruto was going to get back at the Klepto Queen. "Mr. Uzumaki, Mr. Jackson, please keep up," Mr. Brunner called out. The boys rushed back to the group. He gathered all of the students around a 13-foot-tall stone column with a big sphinx on the top, and started telling everyone how it was a grave marker, a steal, for a girl about their age. Naruto, Grover and Percy somehow found themselves at the front of the class instead of the back where they usually stayed and had to pay attention to what Mr. Brunner was saying. Mr. Brunner began to explain what the carvings on the sides meant and actually managed to catch both Naruto and Percy's attention because it was actually somewhat interesting. But everyone else around them was talking and not paying attention to a word he was saying. Trying to help a little, Percy or Naruto told them to shut up, but when they did they got the evil eye from Mrs. Dodds. They didn't care though, and kept their cool. However, when the Klepto Queen started snickering about some of the statues being, Percy blew up and yelled at her to shut up. Of course no one was talking right at that moment, so Mr. Brunner tried to take advantage of the situation. Mr. Jackson, do you have something you wish to add? Mr. Brunner asked, clapping his hands together. No, sir, Percy mumbled as the others began to laugh at him, but they quickly shut up when Naruto gave them his evil eye. Well then, perhaps you can tell me what is happening in the picture, he said, motioning over to a picture on the steel that showed a man sitting on a throne with child in his hands, and his mouth wide open. Percy said, stalling before getting a bit of confidence once he recognized the pictures. That's Kronos eating his kids. Yes, Mr. Brunner said, and he did this because? Well, Percy said as his friend racked his brain to figure it out. Kronos was the king god and... God? Mr. Brunner said with frown before Percy corrected himself. Titan, he said, he didn't trust his kids, who were the gods. So, Kronos ate them, right? But his wife hid the last baby, Zeus, and gave Kronos a rock to eat instead. Then when Zeus grew up, he tricked his dad, Kronos, into barfing up his brothers and sisters. Ew! Said all the girls in the back, causing everyone who was actually listening to roll their eyes. Then there was big fight, and the gods won, Percy said, finishing his answer, getting a nod from Mr. Brunner. That's correct, he said. Then the world became ruled by the 12 Olympians gods, with the most powerful being the 3 brothers Zeus, Poseidon and Hades, he said, pointing towards 3 small figures. Since they overthrew their father, they have been rivals. On many occasions the gods came down to earth, and he said awkwardly before Naruto spoke up. Hooked up because they couldn't keep it in their pants, he said, getting laughter from everybody including Mrs. Dodds and Mr. Brunner. That is correct, Mr. Uzumaki. Can you tell me the correct term for these children? He asked Naruto. They were called demigods, right? Half mortal and half god, Naruto said, getting a nod from Mr. Brunner. Could you perhaps name me some demigod heroes? Mr. Brunner asked Naruto. Hercules and Perseus were a few, they were both sons of Zeus, he said, getting a nod from Mr. Brunner. And there was Theseus, who was a son of Poseidon. That's correct. Very good, Mr. Uzumaki. Good to see you have been studying, he said with a knowing smile. However, they heard laughter coming from the class, and lo and behold, it was coming from Nancy, who, after being asked what was so funny, said, "Pff, like we're going to use this in real life. It's totally going to say on our job applications, please explain why Kronos ate his kids or name a demigod. And why, Mr. Uzumaki," Brunner said, to paraphrase Ms. Bobofit's excellent question, does this matter in real life? Naruto thought for a moment before saying, those who ignore history are bound to repeat it. Mr. Brunner nodded. Good answer, Mr. Uzumaki. Extra credit to both you and Mr. Jackson. And on that note, it's time for lunch. Mrs. Dodds, would you please lead us back outside? The class was gathered on the steps of the museum, where they had a good view of pedestrians and cars alike. The sky looked like a nasty storm was brewing, since dark clouds were forming over the city. This was the norm lately, according to the news, and not just in New York, but everywhere. All around the world, floods, hurricanes and earthquakes were occurring at a near constant rate, leaving many scientists confused about the strange weather patterns. Many just shrugged it off as global warming, but you always had the people shouting about the end of the world. Naruto sat on the edge of a fountain with Percy and Grover, the latter two eating their lunches while Naruto dug into his ramen. No one could ever understand how he managed to eat as much ramen as he did, but many shrugged it off as a high metabolism. Despite being in this great new world, Naruto greatly missed good old Ichiraku's ramen. He even had dreams about eating it again, but he made do with what he had. You get detention again? Grover asked Percy. Nah, he said. Not from Brunner. I just wish he'd lay off me sometimes. I mean, I'm not a genius or something. Alright, Grover said, shrugging. Mind if I have your apple? He said, getting a chuckle from Naruto as Percy passed over the apple. Naruto looked up to observe his fellow classmates. Most were sitting enjoying their lunch, but the klepto queen was trying to pickpocket something from a lady's purse, and, of course, Mrs. Dodds wasn't seeing a thing. Sighing, he looked back to his friends. The three began to chat quietly about the trip and what they would be doing over the summer when she walked up to them with some of her goons behind her, and for some reason she decided it would be a good idea to dump her lunch onto Grover. Oops, she said, grinning with bits of food stuck in her teeth. Percy was angry and was about to jump up, but Naruto stood before he could and shouted loudly, Ms. Bobofit, I have had enough. You will sit down and be quiet like a good little girl, and you will not bother me or my friends again. Do I make myself clear? As he was yelling at her, the wind around him began to pick up, whipping everyone's hair around. Everyone was looking at the blonde at this point. Mr. Brunner was wondering who Naruto's parent was, while Mrs. Dodds was beginning to look worried. Nancy backed up, startled by the blonde, before something very unexpected happened. The water from the fountain rose up and dragged the klepto queen in. She cried, Mrs. Dodds, Naruto pushed me. Percy and Grover, who were watching the entire thing, saw the water rise from the fountain, and both looked rather shocked. Mr. Uzumaki, come with me. She started walking before she stopped and said, You too, Mr. Jackson? Wait, it was me, I pushed her, yelled Grover suddenly. Both looked rather shocked that he was trying to take the fall, but Mrs. Dodds didn't buy it and dragged the boys off. Entering the museum, they made several turns until they were in a room with no security and no people. Turning to Percy, she said, You've been giving us problems, honey. Percy said, Yes, ma'am. She tugged on the cuffs of the jacket she was wearing. Did you really think you would get away with it? The look in her eyes was beyond mad. It was evil. This time Naruto spoke up and said, Wait, what exactly did he do? Thunder shook the building, and after seemingly listening to it, she turned to the blonde and said, This does not concern you, Uzumaki. Turning back to Percy, she continued, We are not fools, Percy Jackson. It was only a matter of time before we found you out. Confess, and you will suffer less pain. They had no idea about what she was talking about, but Naruto was gripping the pen his father gave him. Well? She demanded. Ma'am, I don't. Time is up, she hissed. Then something happened. Her eyes began to glow like barbecue coals. Her fingers stretched, turning into talons. Her jacket melted into large, leathery wings. She wasn't human. She was a shriveled hag with bat wings and claws and a mouth full of yellow fangs, and she was about to slice Percy to ribbons. Figuring that it was time to use the pen, Naruto uncapped the pen. It immediately turned into a 2-foot bronze katana that had a kanji for return on the hilt. The cap turned into a sheath on his left leg that had the kanji for dragon on it with a small rope that hung from the tip of the sheath that had a bell on the end. Naruto instinctively got into a defensive position and glared at the demon Mrs. Dodds and said, Try it, and you will be dead before you can reach him. Mrs. Dodds growled and said, This does not concern you, Uzumaki. I was told not to kill you, but that doesn't mean I can't harm you. All of a sudden, Mr. Brunner, who was apparently standing by the door, yelled out, What ho! Percy! Taking advantage of the momentary confusion, Mrs. Dodds lunged at Percy, but before she could reach him, a wave of wind hit her, blowing her back. Percy caught the pen, which had turned into a double-edged Greek sword, and stood there looking dumbfounded, before he was shaken out of it by Naruto yelling, Percy, watch out! Percy, who was looking at the sword, turned his attention back to the battle to see Mrs. Dodds lunging at him again. So he did the only thing he could. He swung the sword. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, all of a sudden, Mrs. Dodds turned into a cloud of golden sand. Naruto looked at Percy and then said, Good job, Perk. Let's keep this between ourselves. I have a feeling we're in over our heads here. Percy nodded before the blonde said, As for the sword, you didn't see a thing, right? Percy nodded again before Naruto said, Thanks, and I'll try and find out more about what's happening, but keep your head down, alright? Percy nodded again and exited the building. It had started to rain by the time they got outside. Grover was sitting by the fountain, a museum map tented over his head. The Klepto Queen was still standing there, soaked from her swim in the fountain, grumbling to her ugly friends. When she saw the boys coming from the museum, she said, I hope Mrs. Kerr whipped your butts. The boys looked at each other, and then looked back at the girl. Who? Our teacher. Duh, the boys blinked. They had no teacher named Mrs. Kerr, but following Naruto's idea they played it cool and said, Nah, she just wanted to thank us for trying to help the class earlier. Nancy looked shocked before she turned back to her posse. Moving to Grover, the boys asked Grover about Mrs. Dodds. All he said was who? But he paused first, and he wouldn't look at the boys, so they just assumed he was lying and went over to Mr. Brunner. He was still sitting under his umbrella reading his book as if nothing had happened. Walking up to him, he looked at Percy, and said, that would be my pen. Please bring your own writing utensil in the future, Mr. Jackson. And Mr. Uzumaki, that looks like one of mine. Are you sure it's yours? Thunder boomed before Naruto answered, Yes, I'm sure, Mr. Brunner. It's a gift from my father after all. Mr. Brunner looked surprised for a second before he regained his composure and said, Well, take good care of it then. Naruto and Percy nodded before Percy turned around and left, looking for his umbrella, and Naruto was about to do the same before he turned around and said, Horseman, I really hope you know what you're doing. Mr. Brunner's eyes widened before he regained his composure and let out a nervous laugh, saying, Whatever do you mean, Naruto? Naruto's eyes softened before he said, Please don't lie to me. I've been lied to enough already. Just tell us when you're ready. Pausing for a moment, Naruto thought about what his father had suggested he learn before saying, Mr. C, just don't wait too long. And with that Naruto turned around to find Percy, leaving a surprised and spluttering Mr. Brunner in his wake. The remaining weeks at school passed by quickly. Every once in a while, Naruto or Percy would try and surprise people with a question about Mrs. Dodds, but to no avail. The only one who ever had any kind of a reaction to that name was Grover. It was painfully obvious that he was lying about it because of the fact that he hesitated before answering. From all this, Percy and Naruto had found out nothing more than that Grover was a horrible liar. Meanwhile, the weather was slowly getting worse. The never-ending storms were taking their toll on everyone. Percy's grades slipped from C's and D's to solid F's, while Naruto's grades slipped from B's to low C's. Percy was getting in more pointless fights that Naruto usually had to finish. Normally, Naruto would just stand there until someone tried to make him join in, after which Naruto knocked everyone out and claimed self-defense. Unfortunately, Naruto wasn't there all the time and Percy blew up in one of his classes, resulting in Percy being kicked out at the end of the year. He really didn't care though. He was somewhat homesick. As a result, Percy didn't study for any of his exams save one. Percy had always claimed that Mr. Brunner was his favorite teacher. To the blonde it seemed though that Mr. Brunner had always been looking after Percy, maybe even more so than giving him correct marks on wrong answers. Right now though, Percy was getting really frustrated with his book. Arg! Who would remember this anyway? Percy yelled as he threw his book across the room, which had perfect aim of a sleeping Naruto's head. Gah! Naruto yelled as he was woken by a particularly big book hitting him on the back of the head. He bolted up, thinking he was under attack, thanks to ninja training, but ended up hitting his head on the top of his bunk. The blonde grabbed his head in pain before flopping back unceremoniously back onto the bed, turning his head so he could glare at Percy. Sorry. Sigh, it's fine. So what made you feel the need to throw a book into the back of my head? Well, I'm studying for my Latin exam, but all of this is way too confusing. How the hell am I supposed to know the difference between Chiron and Sharon? The blonde chuckled and said, it's simple really. One has an A and the other has an I. Great, now you sound like Mr. Brunner. How are you so good at this stuff anyway? Don't you have ADHD and dyslexia like me? Naruto just flicked his nose and said with a smirk, now that'd be telling. But if you're really having that much of a problem with this, why don't you go and see Mr. Brunner? I'm sure he'd be more than willing to help if you asked. Yeah, alright, maybe he'll let me see that sword again. Want to join me? Sure, after you woke me up, I seriously doubt that I could go back to sleep. Besides, I could use the stretch. After walking for a few minutes, the duo reached the faculty offices to see most of them doors closed and windows dark. They could see that Mr. Brunner had his door slightly open, and there was light in the window. As they started to approach the door, voices became clear from the office. Worried about Percy and Naruto, sir. That was definitely Grover. The guy's voice was probably recognizable to anyone who had met him. Alone this summer, Grover was saying. I mean, a kindly one in the school. Now that we know for sure, and they know too, we would only make matters worse by rushing them, though I suspect Naruto already knows something, Mr. Brunner said, but Percy needs to mature more. But he may not have time. The summer solstice deadline will have to be resolved without him, Grover. Let them enjoy their ignorance while they still can. Sir, they saw her. Their imagination, Mr. Brunner insisted. The mist over the students and staff will be enough to convince him of that. Naruto, though, is a completely different story. He had a celestial bronze blade and was using a fighting style that I don't recognize. He even recognized me. Grover paused before saying, Sir, I can't fail in my duties again. His voice was choked with emotion. You know what that would mean. You haven't failed, Grover, Mr. Brunner said kindly. I should have seen her for what she was. Now let's just worry about keeping Percy alive till next fall, and getting Naruto to camp. When Percy heard the part about keeping him alive, he dropped the book in his hands. Naruto saw this and grabbed the book before it hit the floor before whispering to Percy, I think we should get out of here. We just heard a conversation. I have a feeling that we weren't meant to. Percy nodded and followed Naruto back to their room. Half an hour later, Grover came upstairs to find Naruto yelling at Percy for hitting him in the head again. Grover's sweat dropped at this before asking, Hey guys, what did I miss? Oh, nothing except for this baka hitting me with his book multiple times, he said, staring at the black-haired teen. Now I'm going to get some payback. After he said this, he grinned demonically, which made Percy gulp and Grover shudder. Well, I'm going to get some studying done before I hit the hay. Have fun with that, Naruto. And Percy, at this point he knelt and put his hands in a prayer position. May the gods have mercy upon your soul. Percy gulped again before Naruto grinned and made the hand signs for Shadow Clone Jutsu, Latin paper style. All of a sudden, thousands of Latin papers fell onto Percy, who was effectively buried by the papers. Naruto let out an evil laugh that to this day still haunts people's dreams. On Olympus, a particular god was sitting at his rather large desk doing paperwork, which he felt like he'd been doing for millennia. When will this ever end? The god shouted to no one in particular. As if the fates had decreed this to happen, as soon as he said that a shiver ran up his spine. Why do I get the feeling that my son just made my life 10 times harder? He looked through a permanent iris link to see his son performing the shadow paper clone jutsu. As soon as he saw this, he jumped on top of his desk and yelled, "And oh my son, don't go to the dark side." After he said this, the blonde let out his best evil laugh. "Oh, bad day, bad day, bad day." He started yelling, running in circles till he looked around and saw everyone laughing. "Don't laugh at me or I'll sick my son on you," he threatened. The room was immediately quiet. Naruto's father smiled and thought, well, even though I don't like it, it's certainly intimidating. Good job, kiddo. Back on Earth, Naruto sneezed and felt a warm breeze pass him by. He thought, why do I get the feeling Dad is proud of me for some reason? Oh well, he then went back to burying Percy in papers. The next day had gone by quickly. Naruto was doing backflips in the front yard, excited for the end of school. Percy was even somewhat happy. He was sure he'd failed Brunner's test, but after the testing period ended he was called up and was congratulated on how well he did. Percy had a feeling that he owed Naruto for that. After school, Mr. Brunner had approached Percy and Naruto, telling Percy not to feel too bad about leaving Yancy, and that it was probably for the best. Percy immediately thought the worst of what Brunner was trying to say before the blonde interrupted his reply and said, "Yeah, Perk. Don't take what he's saying the wrong way. You're getting a fresh start, and I've decided that wherever you end up I'll go too. After all, we ADHD/dyslexic kids got to stick together, right?" Percy smiled at that before thanking him and Brunner and dragging Naruto off to their room. As he was leaving, Naruto saw Mr. Brunner mouthing thanks and see you soon. Naruto nodded toward him and then left with Percy to meet up with Grover in their room. A few days later, everyone was ready to go. Naruto didn't have a suitcase, so he just went downstairs. He noticed a few guys talking about their vacation homes in Europe or the Hamptons. He just ignored them and went to the bus. A few minutes later, Grover and Percy came and sat in the seat behind him. The entire bus ride, Grover looked around like he was expecting an attack. About halfway through, Percy decided to tease Grover about what he and Naruto had heard a few nights ago. "Looking for kindly ones?" Grover nearly jumped out of his seat. What do you mean?" Percy confessed about eavesdropping on him and Mr. Brunner the night before the exam while Naruto just listened. Grover's eye twitched. "How much did you hear?" "Oh, not much." "What's the summer solstice deadline?" Naruto said. He winced. "Look, Naruto, Percy, I was just worried for you, see? I mean, hallucinating about demon math teachers, Grover, and I was telling Mr. Brunner that maybe you were overstressed or something, because there was no such person as Mrs. Dodds, and, Grover, you're a really bad liar." Naruto said, "And we never said she was a demon." His ears turned pink. From his shirt pocket, he fished out couple grubby business card. "Just take these, okay? In case you guys need me this summer." The card was in fancy script, which was murder on the boys' dyslexic eyes, but after a few seconds, they both made out. Grover Underwood, Keeper, Half-Blood Hill, Long Island, New York, 800-009-0009. Thanks?" Naruto said. "What's half?" "Don't say it out loud." Grover hissed. "It's a camp I go to for the summer. So you want us to come and visit you this summer?" "Yeah, or if you need me." Naruto just had to make a joke here. Whoa, G-man, I don't roll that way, and even if I did, I'd want a date first." Grover turned red with a mixture of embarrassment and rage while Percy just put a hand over his mouth to keep from laughing. After he calmed down, he asked, "So seriously, G-man, why would we need you?" "Well, to be honest, I'm supposed to protect you, both of you in fact," he said with a glare toward Naruto, who just started laughing. Percy, though, was paying close attention and asked, "Grover, what exactly are you protecting us from?" Just then there was a huge grinding noise under their feet. Black smoke poured from the dashboard and the whole bus filled with a smell like rotten eggs. The driver cursed and drove the bus over to the side of the highway. After a few minutes clanking around in the engine compartment, the driver announced that everyone would have to get off. Grover, Percy, and Naruto filed outside with everybody else. They were on a stretch of country road, no place you'd notice if you didn't break down there. On the side of the highway they were on, there was nothing but maple trees and litter from passing cars. On the other side, across 4 lanes of asphalt shimmering with afternoon heat, was an old-fashioned fruit stand. The stand had a variety of fruits and vegetables, some looking as if they'd just been picked or plucked from the ground. There weren't any customers though, only 3 old ladies sitting there knitting. What they were knitting was a pair of giant electric blue socks. That wasn't the weirdest thing though. What was stranger was they were staring right at Percy. "Please don't tell me they're staring at him," Grover said. "Okay then, I won't," Naruto said. Just then, the old lady in the middle pulled out a giant pair of scissors. Grover cursed and said, "Come on, we're getting back on the bus." Across the road, the old ladies were still watching Percy. The middle one cut the yarn, and Naruto and Percy swore that they could hear that snip across 4 lanes of traffic. Then they turned and faced Naruto, who just glared at them. The old ladies looked frightened for a moment before they balled up the socks and left. At the rear of the bus, the driver wrenched a big chunk of smoking metal out of the engine compartment. The bus shuddered, and the engine roared back to life. "Damn right," he yelled. "All right, the bus to New York is back in service. Everyone back on board." As soon as they got back on the bus, Grover started cussing. Shit, they never make it past 6th. Never." "Hey G-Man, what's up?" Naruto asked. "What did you two see?" "Well, while they were looking at Perk here, they snipped some yarn with a giant pair of scissors." At this, Grover turned white. "And while they were looking at Naruto," Percy continued, "well, they looked at him and turned white. Or pale, either way they looked scared." As soon as Percy finished, Grover fainted. "Well, this was interesting," Naruto mused. They got into the city about half an hour later, at which time Grover woke up. Grover made Naruto and Percy promise to walk them home, but when he left for the bathroom, they grabbed a cab and left. Naruto left Grover a note telling him that he was perfectly capable of protecting Percy, and to ask Mr. C about it. When they reached Percy's apartment, Naruto paid the cab driver and followed Percy upstairs. He was expecting the smell, but not Gabe's appearance. He looked bad the last time he saw him, but this time he looked like a walrus. Oh, how tempted he was to go walrus hunting. "So you're home, and you brought the blonde brat. Where's my mom?" "Working. Got any cash?" "No." "You took a taxi from the bus station," he said. "Probably paid with a 20, got $6-7 in change. Somebody expects to live under this roof. He ought to carry his own weight. Am I right, Eddie?" Eddie, the super of the apartment building, looked at Percy with a twinge of sympathy. "Come on, Gabe," he said. "The kid just got here. Am I right?" Gabe repeated. Eddie scowled into his bowl of pretzels. "The other 2 guys passed gas in Harmony. Actually, I'm the one that paid, and he really doesn't have any money. Though you could try and win it off of me," Naruto said with a smirk. Percy was smiling slightly. Anyone who bet against the blonde would lose. It wasn't a lucky streak, it was a fact. And Gabe took the bait. "Sure, brat, pull up a chair. I hope you lose, Gabe. Hey, don't get snooty with me. Your report card came last week." Percy just grumbled and went to his room with his suitcase. "So who's dealing?" 30 minutes later, Sally Jackson came in with a bag of candy. What she saw shocked her. Naruto had won not only over $35,000, but the guys were all betting their last resorts. Gabe had bet his car, Eddie bet his deed to the building, and the other 2 had bet the deed to an electronics store in Midtown as well as a yacht in the harbor. "Hey Mrs. J," the blonde said. "Naruto, what are you doing?" "Cleaning house. Why don't you go check on Percy? He's in his room." "I'll be done in a minute." After he said this, he went all in, causing the other men to smirk. Sally just sighed and went to Percy's room. When she got there, she saw Percy on his bed. He seemed to be awake but had his eyes closed. "Percy? Mom?" For the next 10 minutes they discussed how the year had been till Percy came home. She saw that he was holding something back, but she didn't press the matter. "Hey Percy, I have a surprise for you," she said. "We're going to the beach." Percy's eyes widened. "Montauk." She smiled and said, 3 nights, same cabin? Cool. Can Naruto come? She laughed at that. "Honestly, with the way the boy is mopping up, I don't think we could go without him." Percy smirked at that. "So when do we leave?" "As soon as I get changed and Naruto finishes." A few minutes later Sally was ready to leave, and so was Percy. When they left the bedroom, what they saw shocked them. Naruto had the keys to the car, deeds and keys to a yacht, an electronics shop, and the building, as well as a plasma T.V, the keys to a Mercedes-Benz E63 AMG, a few dozen stock options, and all the money he had 15 minutes ago. "Hey guys, ready to go?" he asked. "I'm sure, Naruto, but where are you going to put all of this?" "Don't worry about it. I'll have a few movers and lawyers come by to finalize all of this tomorrow." Turning toward the still shocked poker buddies, he said, "Nice doing business with you gentlemen," before turning on his heel and walking out the door. After a few minutes he poked his head back in and asked, "Where are we going?" Naruto was chilling in the back of his new Camaro listening to his music on his iPod. It may be his car, but it had been months since Percy and his mom had seen each other, so he was just rocking to Imagine Dragons. He couldn't drive either, so he didn't mind sitting in the back. The car may have been Gabe's pride and joy, but the inside was trashy, or at least in the back. There were beer cans, half-eaten bags of potato chips, and a few lotto tickets surrounding Naruto's feet. Eventually getting tired of the feeling, He activated a Katon Jutsu to burn everything to ashes and a Wind Jutsu to get rid of it through the window. After about a 2-hour drive, they finally got to the beach. The rental cabin was on the south shore, way out at the tip of Long Island. It was a little pastel box with faded curtains, half sunken into the dunes. Evidently there was always sand in the sheets, and the sea was usually too cold to swim in. All in all, to Naruto it seemed like a rather odd place to take a vacation. After getting there, Sally seemed like years of stress and worry had been lifted off her shoulders. By the time they got everything unpacked and set up, it had gotten dark. Both Percy and Sally had gone to find firewood in an area near the coast, telling Naruto to find materials to start the fire. By the time they got back, they were surprised to see that Naruto already had a fire going, using some old wood he found behind the cabin. So they set down the extra firewood and began to roast hot dogs and marshmallows. Naruto was a surprisingly good cook, they found, as any hot dog he roasted was perfectly cooked. Percy was more surprised to learn that he ate more than ramen. After chowing down for a bit, Mrs. Jackson began to regale them both with stories from when she was a kid, and the stories she wanted to write after she had enough money to quit the candy shop. Naruto offered to give her a loan, and she said she would think about it. After a while, Percy got the nerve to ask his mom about his father. He was kind, Percy, she said, tall, handsome, and powerful. But gentle, too. You have his black hair, you know, and his green eyes. I wish he could see you, Percy. He'd be so proud. How old was I? Percy asked. I mean when he left? She watched the flames. He was only with me for one summer, Percy. Right here at this beach. This cabin. But he knew me as a baby. No, honey. He knew I was expecting a baby, but he never saw you. He had to leave before you were born. Percy looked sad and slightly angry at that, so trying to clear the tension she turned to Naruto, who was looking at the stars and asked, What about you, Naruto? I haven't heard you talk about your parents. Percy looked at the blonde with interest, snapping him out of his brooding. He hadn't heard the blonde talking about his family at all since he met him. The only thing he said was that the sword pen he had was a gift from his father. Naruto's side rose from his comfortable position on the sand to look at the Jacksons. Honestly, I don't know too much about them. I was born in a small town in the country. Mom and Dad were both war heroes. Evidently my mom was really feisty and was nicknamed the Red Hot Habanero. Her name was Kushina. She died the night I was born. Sally and Percy looked down at this. My dad died the same night. His name was Minato, and evidently he was a natural commander. I don't know the details about what happened, but someone killed them both. After a few seconds of uncomfortable silence, Percy asked, So who do you live with, Naruto? Well, I've lived on my own since I was 7. Both Percy and Sally looked shocked at this. By getting support from the state as well as the man I see as my grandfather, but I haven't seen him for about half a year now. I have more to tell, but it's rather emotional for me, so I'd rather not talk about it anymore. That's fine, Naruto, we understand. Well, I think it's about time to turn in. I'm heading to bed. You two don't stay up too much longer, alright? Yes, Mom/Mrs. J, the boys replied. Percy stayed up for about another half hour before he went to bed. Naruto decided to stay out for a bit before he went to bed so he could see the stars. That was one of his favorite things to do when he was younger. He would often climb to the top of the fort's head, lie down, and look at the stars. He always felt at peace when he did that. He hadn't done this in a while though, as the light pollution from the city acted like a blind. You could see a few stars on a good night, but unless there was a major blackout you couldn't see anything. Even from where he was, there was still some light pollution, but it wasn't as bad, so he was able to make out some constellations like the Big and Little Dipper, Orion, and Ursa Major. The constellations didn't change between the dimensions, though they did have different names, but Naruto could still make them out easily in the night sky. He was startled from his thoughts by a noise coming from the shore. It wasn't a wave or something hitting the beach, Naruto could tell that much. Getting up to find the source of the noise, he saw what looked to be a white baby fox sitting on the sand wagging its tail. As soon as it spotted Naruto it started yipping at him. Hi. It just yipped in reply. Hey Karachan, do you know what he's saying? He asked his tenant. Right there Narukuin, oh that feels so good. Naruto blushed heavily and realized that she was still asleep, so he gave her a mental nudge to wake her up. It's too early, Naruto-kun. 5 more minutes. Naruto sighed and said, Sure Karachan, you can sleep as long as you want, after you help me with the fox. Alright, she said, so long as you let me sleep after this. Deal. So what's it saying? He says that big things are about happen and that he has a summoning contract for you. Does he understand English? I don't know, why don't you ask him, you baka? Kara replied. Naruto's sweat dropped at his own stupidity before he asked the fox, "Can you understand me?" The fox yipped in reply, which Kara translated to mean yes. "Great. So where's this summoning contract you want me to sign?" The fox yipped again, and suddenly a scroll popped into existence in front of it. The contract was obviously old and worn out. It had a silver fox head on either end and was sealed by a fox whose tail seemed to wrap around the scroll entirely. Picking up the scroll and opening it gently, the first thing Naruto noticed was that the characters weren't in English or Japanese, but in a combination of Greek and Japanese. Much more importantly, it seemed as if he was the first one to sign the contract. Somewhat still in awe of the honor, he bit his thumb and signed Naruto Uzumaki in blood. As soon as he finished, the scroll rolled up and disappeared with a poof. The fox looked at the new summoner, and bowed slightly before yipping. "So can you understand me now without your tenant's help?" Naruto nodded and was going to thank Kara, but he realized that she was already asleep, so he mentally created a blanket and covered her with it before returning his focus back to the fox. "Good. I don't know why the boss wanted you to sign our contract now, but he did. We were going to approach you next year, but this works. Well, I'll ask him when I summon him. So why are you still here?" The fox seemed to facepalm himself before he said, "I take it you can't read ancient Greek yet, can you?" No. Well, if you were able to read it, you would have found out that I'm going to be your familiar. What that means is that whenever you summon, I'll be the first one that you can summon. It also means that as your power grows, mine does too. Considering that you're already pretty powerful, I'll probably be the size of a car when I get back to MT Surai. Damn, that's gonna hurt. Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly and said, sorry. By the way, what's your name? How could I forget that? My name is Tori Kusuda, but my friends just call me Tori. The fox said while scratching behind his ear. Well, it's nice to meet you, Tori. I look forward to being your best summoner. Believe it. The fox chuckled and said, I'm sure you will be Naruto-kun. Before you go though, the Fox clan has 2 rules. The first is that we are extremely loyal to our friends, so if you betray one, we'll excommunicate you. Naruto nodded in understanding. The second one is if you ever say anything about the power of youth, or wear a green jumpsuit without good reason, we will excommunicate you and very possibly eat you. Naruto paled at the thought of someone who would actually do that. Meanwhile in Konoha 2 shouts of youth were heard, giving everyone who was still asleep nightmares and woke a lot of people in a cold sweat. Back in our world, Naruto got a shiver down his spine that shook him to the core. Alright, I shouldn't have a problem with either of those rules. Cool. Well, I think it's about time that you got to bed. And I need to get back home. Alright, well, I'll see you around, Tori. The fox gave Naruto a mock salute and dispelled, and Naruto went back to the cabin thinking about what the boss fox was like. When he finally calmed down enough to go to sleep, he had a rather odd dream. He was on a beach, with Percy standing next to him and a storm coming toward them. 2 animals, a white horse and a golden eagle, were trying to kill each other at the edge of the surf. The eagle swooped down and slashed the horse's muzzle with its huge talons. The horse reared up and kicked at the eagle's wings. As they fought, the ground rumbled, and a monstrous voice chuckled somewhere beneath the earth, goading the animals to fight harder. Suddenly Percy started running toward them and tried to say something, but he disappeared before he could make a sound. What happened next was even weirder. The eagle and the horse stopped fighting as whirlpools started in the water. The eagle, the horse and a previously unnoticed raven all turned to look at it. A flash happened, and replaced were the 3 animals with 3 men with their backs toward Naruto. Then another flash occurred and a man appeared where there used to be a whirlpool. He was wearing a cloak with a thunderbolt on the right arm and the moon on the left. Naruto couldn't see his face, but the man had blonde hair like his own. As he walked up to the 3 men, a loud rumbling was heard somewhere to Naruto's left. The 4 men looked at each other, and then they turned and sprinted off toward it. Then lightning struck right in front of Naruto, and the dream ended, leaving Naruto feeling very happy for some reason. When Naruto awoke, he realized that he wasn't in the cabin anymore. Instead, he was in the back of his Camaro laying his feet on top of Grover. Ugh, what happened? Naruto asked groggily. Hey man, it's about time you woke up. Percy yelled from up front. Percy, stop yelling. This isn't the time. Mrs. J scolded. It's still behind us. Grover yelled. Wait a minute. What the hell is going on? And why does Grover have goat legs? Naruto yelled. We're being chased. And I'm a satyr. Grover replied. Oh, alright, Naruto said as if it didn't surprise him at all. By who? Who are we being chased by? Percy asked. Oh, nobody much, Grover said, just the Lord of the Dead and a few of his bloodthirstiest minions. Grover. Sorry, Mrs. Jackson. Could you drive faster, please? Mrs. J made a hard left. They swerved onto a narrower road, racing past darkened farmhouses and wooded hills and pick-your-own-strawberries signs on white picket fences. So where are we going? Naruto asked, obviously stealing ready for combat. We're heading to the camp I told you about. You'll be safe there. Mrs. J seemed to choke up on that. Mom, is this camp the one that Dad wanted to send me to? Percy asked with concern evident in his voice. Yes, she answered quietly. Mrs. J, look out! Naruto yelled. Turning her attention back to the road, she pulled the wheel hard to the right, and they got a glimpse of a figure she'd swerved to avoid, a dark, fluttering shape, now lost behind them in the storm. What was that? Percy asked. We're almost there, Mrs. J said, ignoring his question. Another mile. Please. 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 It looked like Percy was about to ask something to his mother, but before he could, there was a flash, a big noise that sounded like freight trains colliding, and then the car exploded. Oh my head, Naruto said as he peeled his head off of the driver's seat. Percy! Mrs. J shouted. I'm fine, Mom, he said. They'd swerved into a ditch. The driver's side doors were wedged in the mud. The roof had cracked open like an eggshell and rain was pouring in. Hey G-Man, you alright? Naruto asked as he shook the saddle. Food, he said in a dazed state. Good, he'll be alright, Naruto thought. Percy, Naruto, head to the top of the hill. The one with the big pine tree. Mrs. J yelled over the thunder. As if on cue, the lightning illuminated the pine tree, which was big enough to be the White House Christmas tree. Unfortunately, it also illuminated a really big guy with horns, who was heading straight for them. On the other side, there's a farmhouse. Run in there and get help. She yelled. We aren't leaving you, Mom. Percy yelled. You have to. I can't come with you. She yelled. Mrs. J, leaving people behind isn't my style. If you can't pass that tree, then help Percy carry Grover to it, and then stay as close to it as you can, Naruto said, his battle instincts taking over. But what are you going to do? Percy asked. I'll hold this guy off until you can get help, but you can't do that. If you do, Naruto just looked at both of them before grabbing his pen and saying, Go. Now, Mrs. J just nodded, but Percy looked like he was going to protest. That is until Naruto kicked the stuck door open with pure strength. Percy was startled at that, but he had no time to watch the blonde. He had to help Grover and his mother to the top of the hill. Naruto saw his friends and Mrs. J get out before charging off to meet the Minotaur. Hey! Beefcakes! Come get some! He yelled. Beefcakes, who had been smelling the air, barely heard the blonde, but heard him nonetheless, and charged towards him. Olé! The blonde yelled as he jumped over the cowman, planting a foot between his horns. Unfortunately for him, the bull man kept running until he hit the car, which ended up skidding across the road and igniting the gas tank, causing quite the spectacular explosion, much to the chagrin of the blonde. Hey Beefcakes! That was my car! He yelled. He wasn't listening though. He was smelling the air again until he smelled Percy and his mother. Shit! Naruto cursed. Percy, Mrs. J, look out! He yelled. They looked to see the bull man charging at them and quickly separated. It seemed to want Percy though and kept chasing him. He lowered his horns to strike, but Percy jumped out of the way just in time. The bull man roared in frustration and turned his sights on Mrs. J, who had reached the top of the hill and was laying Grover down in the grass. He charged and caught Mrs. J by the throat. Naruto managed to get up to where they were at this point, but couldn't do anything to help. He really didn't want to risk anyone's life with his sword, so he did the only thing possible. He waited. MOM/MRS. J. Percy and Naruto yelled out. She caught his eye and managed to yell go, before the monster closed his fist around her neck. There was a flash of light and then she was gone. The monster then turned toward Grover and was about to pick him up before Percy did something really stupid. He took off his red jacket and started running around the bull man. Shit! Naruto said as he watched the Minotaur charge toward Percy with his arms wide. He knew that Percy would be caught if he tried to dodge like last time, and was about to do something drastic to save his friend, but at the last moment he managed to jump over the bull man's charge and grab his neck. It would have been amusing to see Percy getting thrown around like he was at the rodeo if it weren't for the serious situation. As Percy was hanging on for dear life, Naruto was planning his next move. He was going to charge at the bull man and take it down as soon as Percy managed to get off. Beefcakes wheeled around and Percy was starting to lose his grip, so he grabbed one of his horns and yanked it off with a snap. Beefcakes bellowed in rage and flung Percy, who hit his head on a rock. Beefcakes was about to charge at Percy, but Naruto saw his chance and jumped over the bull man's head with his sword to his left, and effectively cut off the bull man's other horn, which fell to the ground beside him. Naruto landed between the bull man and Percy, who was staying awake but only barely, and took a basic sword stance. A slash and sword straight in front held by both hands, sharpened edge facing opponent. Percy, stay down. I'll handle it from here, he said to Percy, who looked relieved. Beefcakes was infuriated at having his other horn cut off, and started charging at the blonde, seeing only red. In a burst of speed, Naruto appeared behind Beefcakes, which awed Percy, who was just barely staying awake, and sheathed his katana, whispering katana no gaijutsu, ichi sensidaraiki as he did. Beefcakes didn't move for a second before he turned into a pile of golden dust that started blowing in the wind. Naruto walked over to his horn and picked it up, sealed it, and then created a clone to grab Grover while he got Percy. As he approached Percy, he could tell that he had a concussion and was obviously shaken about seeing his mother disappear in front of him. He was still holding the horn that he'd broken off of the Minotaur's head. Hey Perk. Relax. Everything will be fine. I promise that we'll find a way to get your mom back, alright? Percy nodded before he was picked up by Naruto bridal style. The last thing he remembered was Naruto arriving with him at a building and Naruto calling for help. Naruto was quickly met by a centaur, which he assumed was Chiron in his human form, and a blonde girl about Percy's age. Chiron looked surprised to see them, or at least to see both Grover and Percy knocked out. The girl seemed like she was dressed for a vacation, but she seemed ready to grab a knife that was on her hip if he presented any threat. Chiron noticed that and said, Annabeth, he's a friend. I was watching over him and the boy in his arms while I was undercover at Yancy. He managed to identify me just after the event with the kindly one. I believe that he just defeated the Minotaur and saved Percy's life as well. The girl, now identified as Annabeth, slowly backed her hand up from the hilt of the knife, but still seemed to be wary of the blonde in front of her. Hey Mr. C, as much as I'd like to stand out here all night, I have 2 injured people that need taking care of, and I'd really like to take a long nap. That seemed to get Annabeth's attention, and she looked toward Chiron, who nodded, and then gestured for Naruto to follow her to the barn house. They soon formed a neat and orderly line, with Annabeth leading, followed by Naruto, who was followed by his clone, and the rear brought up by Chiron. Chiron looked astonished at seeing the clone, but before he could say anything about it the clone turned to face him and silently mouthed out the word later before turning back to following his creator. After reaching the house the clone dispelled and handed Grover to Chiron. Annabeth led the trio up the stairs to what looked like a hospital room, except nicer. It wasn't the normal boring white, but rather an orangish yellow that seemed to glow like the sun. There were several beds lying in a standard hospital format, but they were actual beds, not the thin uncomfortable kind. A notable difference was that there was very little modern medical equipment in the room, something that astonished Naruto greatly. All in all, it looked like a hospital that Naruto actually wouldn't mind staying in. Here Annabeth said, gesturing to a pair of beds lying next to each other. Put them in these beds. I don't know if any of the Apollo campers are up right now, so we'll just make do with ambrosia and nectar until the morning. Naruto had no idea what that was, but it sounded like something that would help his friends, so he nodded and fell over. Annabeth and Chiron rushed over to help the blonde, obviously somewhat concerned for him. His vision was blurry and he knew he was being called to his mindscape, so he said, Hey, I'm gonna go ahead and take a nap, okay? Nighty-night. And with that he collapsed unconscious, leaving a chuckling horseman and a stupefied Annabeth. Naruto's mindscape. As Naruto awoke, the first thing he noticed was the distinctly unsewer-like appearance of wherever he had ended up. In fact, it seemed to him to be like his old apartment in Konoha before he left that world, only less trashed. Ugh, where am I? He asked aloud. Well, you certainly aren't where you expected to be. That's for sure, said a voice to his left. Suddenly, the area changed. The one that was overlooked Konoha, at the top of Hokage Mountain. A man in white robes stood on top of the forest's head, holding what seemed to be Naruto's sword in his hand. He had long black hair, and a mustache that seemed to be a combination between a circle beard and a 5 o'clock shadow. His eyes were a swirling tide of green and blue. Hey Naruto, how's it going? He said. Do I know you? He asked. No, well, yes, well, sort of, he said, scratching the back of his head. So what's your name? Where are my manners? My name is Raime no Shio, and I'm your sword. Right, and I am the Queen of England. Naruto said sarcastically. No, seriously, I am the embodiment of your sword in your conscious. In fact, I am somewhat surprised that you managed to hear my name on the first time. Of course, you are my first wielder, so I should have guessed that would happen. Anyways, you need to do 2 things to access my full power. The first thing that you need to do is defeat your hate. The second thing you need to do is learn my name, but you've already done that. So, all you need to do is conquer your hate, and I can give you my full power. He said happily. O.K, so how do I do that? Well, all you need to do is confront your dark self and defeat him. This will not only allow you to gain control over my power but also a degree of control over Kara's power. Alright, so where do I find my dark self? Right behind you, a voice said. Naruto turned around to see an exact copy of himself standing behind him. Only he seemed darker, and much angrier. He wasn't any different than Naruto except for the fact that his eyes were red. Who are you? He asked. I am you, the dark clone responded. The scenery changed to show the village filled with people, and they saw a crowd surrounding a young Naruto. He was being beaten by many in the crowd, while those who stood didn't simply stood and watched silently. They hurt us. The dark Naruto said, we want revenge. We want justice to be done. Yes, they hurt me, but I don't want to hurt them, I want their respect. But you hate them, don't you? You hate them for what they did to you, or for what they didn't do to help you. You want them dead. No, I don't. How can I be respected if I hated them all? Then how do I exist? After Dark Naruto said this, the scenery changed again to what looked like Team 7's training ground. I am your hate Naruto. Embrace me, and we can destroy everything that ever wanted to harm you, everything that wronged you. We can get revenge on your father, who abandoned you, and make the world rue the day that they crossed us. Embrace the darkness. Naruto could feel a part of himself wanting to join his dark self, and give in to the hatred. Then, images flashed through his mind. The Sanime, Irika, Kakashi, Grover, Percy, and images of what he thought his mother and father looked like. That may be true, that I have hate for some people, but I have to accept that you are a part of me. I still want to prove them wrong. I will prove them wrong. Thank you for showing me this, but I don't need you anymore. I have friends who care about me, and a father, who I don't hate for abandoning me, but rather admire him for being able to make the tough choices. I don't need you anymore, but I will remember you, and what you have said. Thank you? Dark Naruto looked shocked at what Naruto had said, before a bright flash engulfed him. When the flash cleared, the man wearing the cloak stood there in place of Naruto's hate. Well, it looks like you've managed to cure us of our hatred, he said. Naruto was surprised by the man's appearance. It looked like the man from his dream. No, it was the man from his dream. Hey, how'd you get here? Weren't you a part of my dream? The man chuckled a bit before saying, I'm not from our dream, and I'm the image of what you could become in the future. What sounded like thunder boomed in the distance, and the older Naruto seemed to be listening to it before he turned back to Naruto and said, well, it looks like it's time for you to go. We'll meet again. Another bright flash encompassed them both, and Naruto suddenly found himself back on top of Hokage Mountain, standing in front of the man with white robes. Well, it seems you've conquered your hate and gained full access to my power. This will be the last time we meet, unless someone invades your mindscape. Also, if we do meet again, just call me Raime. In battle, to use my full power, shout, rise, thundering tide, and you'll be able to feats that many consider impossible. Now then, I think Kara wants to see you, so enjoy that. Bye. And with that, Raime clapped his hands together and disappeared. Naruto saw another bright flash and suddenly found himself standing in Kara's cell. Man, I am really getting tired of that. Oh really, Naruto-kun? Well then, consider this your punishment for getting yourself in such a dangerous situation. Naruto turned around to see Kara smiling evilly. Oh shit, was the only thing he managed to think before he was grabbed by the Queen of the Foxes and dragged off to see bright flashes for the rest of the night. Back in the real world, Naruto woke up with a jolt, which surprised Annabeth, who had been watching over him and Percy since they came in. Annabeth hadn't really had anything better to do, so she watched them overnight. She found the blonde to be rather amusing, as all night he'd been mumbling something about no more bright flashes. Ugh, where am I? Naruto asked. You're in Camp Half-Blood, more specifically our camp hospital. Naruto visibly cringed at the word hospital, which caused Annabeth to smirk, seeing as she now had blackmail on her fellow blonde for the future. Naruto turned to look at the girl, who he quickly identified as Annabeth. Or at least, that's what he thought her name was, because that's what the centaur was calling her. Annabeth, right? Seeing her nod, he smiled and said, Name's Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Annabeth Chase, she said, smiling. Now that you're up, I have a feeling that Chiron is going to want to talk with you. Do you need help getting up? Nah, I'm fine. How's Percy? She looked over at the boy in question and said he's fine. He got a nasty concussion, but he should be up either today or tomorrow. Getting up, Naruto felt like something was missing. Checking his pockets, he found that both his sword and his wallet were missing. Hey, do you know where my wallet and my pen are? The pen is a gift from my dad, and the wallet contains some ID cards I might need, as well as my only photo I have of my parents. He was lying, of course, as he still hadn't gotten a picture of either of his parents, but he did have a seal for some of his shuriken and Hiroshin kunai on a slip of paper in there. Sure, here's your wallet, and your pen was put into storage for safekeeping, she said, causing Naruto to frown a bit. Alright, thanks, he said before he snapped his fingers and Raime appeared in its sheath on his left leg. Then he channeled some chakra into his wallet, causing a kunai pouch to poof into existence on his right leg. So where are we heading? Annabeth, who was somewhat shocked by the sudden appearance of the pouch and the sword that they'd taken halfway across the camp and stored in a locked shed on Naruto's person, only gestured to the door to the porch. Naruto nodded and opened the door saying, "Ladies first," which caused a combination of a glare and a blush from Annabeth, before she stepped outside, quickly followed by Naruto. He was immediately surprised by the camp. It reminded him a lot of Konoha, in that it had a very large forest off to one side. The camp was in a valley that stretched to the ocean, and seemed to have Greek-style buildings dotted across the landscape. It was truly a beautiful sight. As they rounded around the porch, Naruto began to hear someone that sounded like Chiron talking to someone else, before he saw Chiron in his wheelchair sitting across from a middle-aged man who seemed rather plump and had really curly black hair. He didn't seem very threatening, but he had an aura of power that Naruto picked up on immediately. Probably a god, Naruto thought. Grover was there too, standing next to the middle-aged god with a pair of obviously fake feet on. "Ah, Naruto, now we have 4 for Pinnacle," Chiron said, gesturing to a chair to the right of the man. The man just looked up with bloodshot eyes and said with a sigh, "Well, I suppose I must say it. Welcome to Camp Half-Blood. There. Now don't expect me to remember you or anything about you, or to even care for that matter." Naruto, as he took his seat, was racking his brain to figure out who this god was, but only one really fit the bill. "Thank you, Lord Dionysus. I'm honored to meet you." Everyone there, including Dionysus, looked surprised that Naruto was able to recognize the god of wine without being introduced first. "O.K, I'm interested, kid, what's your name?" That shocked everyone there, as Dionysus never asked for anyone's name, or seemed to be interested about anything. "Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, at your service. By the way, could you give me a glass of sake? Where I used to live I acquired a taste for the stuff, but since I came here I haven't had any." Everyone by this point was in a constant state of shock, Dionysus by the kid's name, and the other 3 at the blatant request of an alcoholic beverage. Dionysus recovered first, and quickly changed the conversation over to Japanese. "Are you from the elemental nations?" he asked. "Hi, from the village hidden in the leaves, or Konoha, Dionysus-sama. Are you the Jinchuriki of the Kyubi no Yoko?" "Hi, although she prefers to be called Kara." "Last question, what ninja rank were you?" "Genin, Dionysus-sama." Changing the conversation back to English, he said, "Sure, 1 glass of sake coming up. By the way, kid, just call me Mr. D. Dionysus makes me feel old." Naruto deadpanned and said, "You are old." Mr. D smiled and said touche before he snapped his fingers and a bottle of sake appeared next to a sake glass, and he gave both to Naruto. Chiron immediately started yelling at Dionysus, saying, "You can't give alcohol to a minor." Dionysus turned toward Chiron and glared, saying, "He's not a minor, he's a ninja, and by his laws is allowed to what he wants. Besides, he can't get drunk anyways, and it's more like water to him." That left Chiron speechless. His eyebrows seemed to be permanently raised into his forehead, as were Grover's and Annabeth's. Chiron eventually recovered and turned toward Annabeth, saying, "Annabeth, would you go check on Naruto's bunk? We're putting him and Percy in cabin 11 for now." She nodded and turned to leave before Naruto said, "Thanks, but as long as you aren't expecting rain, I think I'll sleep outside." Then he turned toward Mr. D and said in Japanese, "It's been a while since I've been able to sleep under the moon. I would really appreciate it if I were allowed to." Mr. D switched the conversation back to English and said, "Sure, go ahead and sleep outside. I think cabin 11 would appreciate not having to share more space." Then he quickly changed the conversation back to Japanese and said, "Though I think you want to pray to Artemis for permission. She might think you're a pervert or something if you don't." Naruto both blushed and paled at that thought. He knew through the old stories about what Artemis did to perverts. He was going to make certain he prayed to Artemis as soon as he could. "Would you guys please stop switching languages? It's getting pretty annoying," Chiron said while rubbing his temples. Dionysus just huffed and laid back in his chair, while Naruto just scratched the back of his head and said, "Gomen." "Alright then, Annabeth, would you kindly show Naruto around camp, and then get back as soon as you can? I want you to be here as soon as you can be." Annabeth sighed and said, "Sure, anywhere in particular?" "Show him around the cabins, the mess hall, and to the forest, and then have him join in any activities that he wants." Annabeth nodded and started out the door with Naruto, leaving a stressed centaur in a foldable chair and a god arguing with the sky about how a kid could have alcohol but he couldn't. They made quick time to the cabins, not really talking unless they passed an important building, such as the strawberry fields or the barn house, which Naruto could have sworn had something moving in the attic of, but he said nothing. He was worried about Grover, who seemed really stressed out at the meeting, and Annabeth had her mind on other things. Finally they reached the cabins, and Annabeth explained the symbolism of each one. Naruto felt drawn to cabin 1 and 3, but didn't say anything. He also noticed that neither Hades nor Hestia had a cabin, and asked Annabeth about it. She responded by saying that Hades didn't have a cabin because the Olympians labeled him as an outcast, which Naruto scowled at, and Hestia was a virgin goddess that was mostly forgotten after she gave up her seat to Dionysus. Naruto was saddened that the Olympians forgot about their own family, but said nothing. After that, she showed him the mess hall and explained how to offer to the gods and what there was to eat. She also explained that there were basically infinite amounts of whatever it was that you wanted. This of course made Naruto's mouth water at the thought of eating continuous ramen. Finally, they stopped at the entrance to the forest. To anyone else, it may have seemed big, but to Naruto it actually seemed really small, or at least compared to Konoha's forests. Well, here we are, final stop on the tour of the camp. So what are you going to do now? Annabeth asked. Well, what's happening later? There's a sword fighting class in 15 minutes, which lasts until 11:45, then there's a master's archery class at noon with Chiron instructing, and blacksmithing and other activities are day round. Cool, well I think I'll check out the sword fighting class. Thanks, Annabeth. Annabeth nodded and both went their separate ways, with Annabeth heading back toward the big house and Naruto heading to the training grounds. He got there just in time for the class to start. There wasn't any real teacher, it just seemed to be campers practicing against other campers. Naruto paired up with a kid named Luke, who was evidently the best sword fighter in the camp. So you're new here, huh? Well, allow me to show you the ropes, Luke said before he lunged at Naruto, who blocked the strike easily and replied, I already know my way around, I'm just looking for a challenge. And with that Naruto parried and began using some of his own katas. Within 5 minutes the duel was over, with the blunt side of Naruto's blade resting on Luke's throat. You've got some skills, Luke, but I think that you need a bit more practice. Go again? He asked, offering his hand to Luke, who accepted it, and said, Thanks. How did you get that good anyways? Aren't you new here? Yeah, but I've been learning how to use a sword for a while now. At this point they both noticed the silence that had appeared, and looking around they found that every camper there was staring at them, or specifically, Naruto. Naruto smirked and said, Well, I bet I can beat all of you. To sweeten the deal, I'll offer my sword to anyone who can beat me. But if I beat all of you, I get to be the teacher of this class, and you all owe me a favor. Everyone, including Luke and the Aries kids, looked shocked at the blonde's declaration. Are you sure, Naruto? You do realize that you just challenged everyone here, right? Yep, and no one's going to lay a scratch on me unless they come at me with the intent to kill. So shall we? He asked with a smile. Luke and the rest of the campers smirked, and Luke said, Of course. Then everyone charged at Naruto. Over an hour later, and all of the campers had learned one thing. Don't bet against Naruto Uzumaki. All of the campers that had been in the class were on the ground, and most were moaning about the beating they got. The only ones still standing were Luke and some of the Aries campers, but they were all disarmed and had surrendered, albeit begrudgingly, to the blonde ninja. Good match, everyone. Seeing as how I'm teaching this class from now on, I want us to meet daily starting in 2 weeks. Somehow, I have a feeling that something is going to happen later that is going to take up most of my time. In the meantime, I want you all to practice like you did today, though not all against one. The class just groaned, but acknowledged that the blonde should teach the class, seeing as how he just beat them into the ground. Class dismissed, Naruto said before walking off to join the master archery class. When he got there, he saw a lot of what he recognized as Apollo kids and some others stringing bows and beginning to get into firing position. Chiron looked over at Naruto, who was picking up a box and a few arrows. Needless to say, he was surprised the blonde sword wielder. Naruto, what are you doing here? This is a master archer class. Shouldn't you be off exploring the camp? Naruto chuckled and said, Nah, I already did that, and I just got done kicking the hell out of your swordsman class. Mind if I try my hand at shooting? Chiron's eyebrows resumed their position on his forehead. He had expected the blonde to go to the swordsman class, but to beat them all and then go to an archery class. He half expected the kid to be able to make clones or control the wind by now. And mahaha. Alright, Naruto, you get 5 shots. Do your best to hit the bullseye, and don't be disappointed if you miss. The archery class stepped back from the firing line, allowing to step up and chose his target. He quickly drew his bow and knocked an arrow and steadied his breathing before releasing his 5 shots within a span of 5 seconds. All 5 hit dead center, with each arrow going through the next, and the last one going through the target and hitting the ground behind it. Needless to say, Chiron and the campers were shocked. No one had ever done that before, and on their first time no less. Chiron walked up shakily to the blonde and said, "Naruto, can you do that again?" "Sure," he replied, before being handed 5 new arrows and a further target, and just like before, all of the shots hit dead center. One of the campers whistled with envy and Chiron walked up to Naruto and said, "Well, I think I just found the new teacher for the archery class. Would you mind teaching it, Naruto?" Naruto smiled and said, "Sure, but can you keep teaching for the next week or two? I have a feeling that something else is going to need my attention." Chiron grimaced and said, "Sure." Before Naruto asked, "By the way, does the camp have any spearman class? If it does, I may just make a combined combat class out of the archery, swordsman, and spearman classes." Chiron, who by this point thought that the blonde was an enigma worthy of Daedalus himself, asked, "Yes, we do." "Why do you say that you may just make a combined combat class?" Naruto smirked and said, "Because I already agreed to teach the swordsman class when I beat them, that's why." Chiron looked even more astonished at that, and began murmuring something about a new Alexander before a loud flushing noise was heard, followed by something that sounded like the crashing of waves. "Well, sounds like Percy's awake. See ya later, Chiron," Naruto said as he started sprinting toward the source of the noise. When he got there, he saw Percy and a girl he identified as Annabeth walking out of a destroyed bathroom looking at 3 girls sprawled in and covered by mud. "You're dead, new boy. You're totally dead," he heard one of the girls say. Naruto thought now might be a good time to show some of his powers, and threw a Hirishin kunai in front of Percy's feet. Seconds later, he appeared where it stood with the kunai in his hand and said, "Care to repeat that?" Percy, who was about to give a rather snarky and unnecessary reply, was saved by Naruto and his sudden appearance. He and Annabeth, who had seen his sword and kunai pouch appear out of thin air, weren't as surprised as the rest of the campers at his sudden appearance. Annabeth's mouth was hitting the proverbial floor though, as she began to go through the various uses of this ability on the battlefield. Clarice, who was already pissed off, just got more pissed when she saw Naruto appear, and was about to give her own snarky reply before her friends interrupted, saying in unison, "Sorry, sir. We didn't mean your friend any harm." They had both been in Naruto's new swordsman class, but Clarice didn't know that, so she started yelling at her friends, saying, "Why are you saying sorry to him? He looks like a complete weakling." Naruto decided to show off a bit, and channeled some chakra into his pinky before he picked her up with the digit. This is why he said looking for a name. She didn't give one, but her friends did. "This is why, Clarice, your friends were being respectful." He finished before he threw her back on the ground. Looking up, she asked with a growl, "Who are you?" He smirked and said, "The name's Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, new instructor of the swordsman and archery classes and soon to be instructor of the spearman class and the new combined combat class. And if I hear you threatening my friends again, let's just say that even Hermes won't be able to compare with my level of pranking." Naruto started laughing manically, causing Clarice and her friends to cringe as they made a hasty retreat. Annabeth just looked between Naruto and Percy before Percy broke the silence. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm thinking," she said, "that I want you both on my team for Capture the Flag." Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the Austin Jack Zero for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.